federal government has projected that the nation's oil production rate would rise by 22% by the year end to 2.2 million barrels per day from current levels. The Minister of State for Petroleum, Dr. Emmanuel Ibe Kachikwu, expressed the hope that the lifting of force majeure on all oil fields in by the country December and January would mark the target realizable yesterday during his meeting with the Indian Oil Minister Dharmendra Pradhan at New Delhi, India. Dr. Kachikwu also hinted that Nigeria was likely to sign a cash-raising oil deal with India for $15 billion by the end of this year, a deal in which the India's oil minister was quoted as confirming that Nigeria has requested an upfront payment. He said the Organization of the Petroleum Exporting Countries, OPEC, which has agreed to cut world output to rescue prices, has however allowed a production window of 1.8 million barrels per day to 2.2 million barrels for the country. The minister noted that apart from the impact of low oil prices, which accounted for 70% of the country's revenue, the country's energy facility had been crippled by attacks by militants calling for a greater share of the country's oil wealth. Kachikwu, who also projected that oil prices would rise from current levels by December. Pradhan said at the end of the meeting that the parties agreed on significant potentials for diversifying India's engagement into exploration and production, refinery building, and marketing in Nigeria. UK inflation reaches its highest level in 2 years as it exceeded forecast jumps by 1% in September from 0.6% in August. The Office for National Statistics record published today stated the input prices rose an annual 7.2% in September after a 7.8% jump the previous month. The new data comes after Bank of England Governor Mark Carney said consumers will face difficulty going from no inflation to some inflation. A senior economist, Ben Brethel, said inflation could easily exceed the 2% target in 2017, which is not good for savers and people with low income. Crude oil also pushed up prices, increasing 14.2% year-on-year in September, the highest since 2012, and the increase in producer price inflation over recent months can be partly attributed to the changes in the sterling exchange rates. Food prices fell by 0.3% between August and September, compared with a rise of 0.1% a year ago. And now from South Sudan. South Sudan sacked Vice President Riek Machar, who fled the country in August, has vowed to return, saying his credibility is intact. Mr. Machar said his rebel faction could still negotiate a peace deal with President Salva Kiir. Mr. Machar, who first fled to the Democratic Republic of Congo, is now being threatened in Johannesburg, South Africa. In July, Mr. Machar's bodyguards and President Salva Kiir's presidential guards fought each other, sparking days of violence in the country. His statement comes despite last week's heavy fighting in the city of Malakal. The fighting erupted less than a year after a peace deal was signed to form a unity government and end the civil war that has left hundreds of people dead and more than 100,000 has fled across the border. We'll go on a short break now. More news when we return. Stay tuned.